What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you the first round of playoffs of APA Academy, and yeah, I'm up against Tony, so I feel like I have quite a bit to explain before we actually get into the battle because of the whole situation surrounding this. So if you guys want to skip all of that, I would not blame you. I might put a timestamp in the description, but odds are I will be far too lazy to do that, so just fast forward the video until you see the mon start moving actually in the game, and I'll try to minimize the amount of actual gameplay that I talk about before that. But anyway, so the first thing I should address is the fact that I am still playing. Well, going into my Week 12 game, I played that a week early under the assumption that I had been eliminated from playoffs after my Week 10 game. I think it was my Week 10 game. I was under the assumption that I was completely out of playoffs mathematically, and so I was like, okay, this is awesome, just gonna go in, mess around in my weeks 11 and 12 games. And as that happened, I played my week 12 a week early, and then I ended up going home for fall break. And considering I was in a little bit of a shiny hunting mood at the time, I brought my DS. So yeah, the fact that I brought my DS home because of shiny hunting mood, thanks to the Solgaleo and Lunala event and the Tapu Koko, shiny Tapu Koko event that could be any nature, that will play into a later part of the story. But as it happened, I ended up making playoffs, and not only did I end up making playoffs, I actually ended up making it as one of the higher seeds, just because somebody in my league, or somebody on my team that was ahead of me, ended up just dropping out completely, so everybody moved up a spot. That, and I did some calculation wrong in terms of how I figured out whether or not I would actually be in playoffs. So yeah, ended up making playoffs completely accidentally. I was ready to be done with Pokemon for the generation. I was ready to never touch my DS again, and then like a couple days later they said, hey Sticks, you realize that you're in playoffs, right? And I'm like, huh? Excuse me, what's this about playoffs? And so yeah, I ended up making playoffs accidentally, so here we are. And the fact that we are on Showdown is due to the aforementioned shiny hunting that I was planning to do, because like I said, due to the shiny events, I was in a shiny hunting mood, and I had a little bit of free time at home. There wasn't a whole lot that was going on at school, so when I went home, I actually didn't even need to study. So I was thinking that I would have a decent amount of free time in the morning and at night to potentially soft reset for a Nihilego. I always kind of go through these phases with my DS where I'm like, you know what, I am just going to soft reset for a certain cool looking legendary. My choice of Nihilego is suspect, but that's beside the point. But I always seem to get this way with Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I was trying to soft reset for a starter for a while, and like it always happens that I give up after a couple days. But anyway, I was soft resetting for a Nihilego at home, and thinking that I was out of playoffs, I was like, you know what, I'll just leave this at home. I'm gonna be back over Thanksgiving and Christmas. If I need it for something over the next couple months, like if I decide to do another random Wi-Fi league, or if I need to gen for somebody, I can just grab it then. Well, turns out I ended up making playoffs, and I was already back in Ohio by the time that I found out that I had made playoffs, so it was kind of a, well, my DS is home. And I went through the awkward situation of having to explain to my mom that her 25-year-old son needed his 3DS with a Pokemon game in there, and he needed it ASAP, and he could not wait until Thanksgiving. He could not wait a single month because he needed his DS right now, and so it's currently being shipped, but it will not be here until it would not have been here until I believe it was 4 days after this game was due. So I was like, hey, Tony, do you mind playing on draft format? Because I got Carney to make a level 50 tier that had the exact same timer as Wi-Fi, and he was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And the only reason that we were able to play on Showdown or on Draft Frontier was because Carney did me a huge solid in making the tier specifically for me to be able to have that timer and at level 50. So thank you, Carney. But anyway, I am done rambling at this point. I actually had a goal for myself to start the battle 5 minutes in after all the stories, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So looking at the matchup, we played Tony in week 1, and that battle ended up going to timer. That was my first real exposure to Wi-Fi draft draft format in terms of Wi-Fi being an unfortunate win con, despite the fact that I had the game won in no question one, like guaranteed, absolutely zero possibility of him winning. I ended up only barely winning because of a clutch last second knockout by Zygarde. And so my mentality going into this game was, okay, he almost won last time because he got a lead. Even though I did have the win in the bag, with the timer, I cannot afford to give him any chance to have any type of a lead. So this team is designed to win the war of attrition. This team is designed to wear him down and just slowly but surely knock out every single one of his mons. It's designed to never give him the lead, and once I have one of his mons down, it just slowly chokes him out. You might say it's kind of stall, but I'd say it's more like a semi-stall actually. And then yeah, I know I'm running stall, well, semi-stall anyway, because I do have some very good offense in the form of my Mega Mawile and my Zygarde, but nonetheless, with the combination of Porygon, Necrozma, and Dialga in addition to Persian, my team is very, very bulky and very, very reliant on Toxic and Knockoff. I have 3 Toxic users on this team, and I have 3 Knockoff users on his team. My game plan is to wear him down, get rocks up, Toxic everything, and eventually win late game with my Zygarde once I have put myself in a position to do so. So that's really my whole game plan. Never take risks. Don't let him get any kind of a lead, because even though we're on Showdown, I think it still might have like the 90-minute or the 90-minute timer or whatever. So I want to put myself in a lead and just never give that up. So looking at his team, I'm noticing that he does not have a single rocker, which is fantastic for me. So he also does not have a single toxic immunity. So my toxic spamming is going to be 1,000,000,000% free. I will not really have to worry about hazards unless his Greninja has hazards, which if he does, that's kind of annoying, but his team is more worried about hazards than me due to having a Lugia and a Mega Charizard. So it's really just kind of looking like I'm in a better position overall in this game. I think my bulk is something that if I can deal with the threats of Charizard and Snorlax accordingly, there will not be much he can do to end up winning. And considering he does have the Florges, I'm assuming that this does have Aromatherapy. Well, Aromatherapy only has 8 PP. My goal is to wear him out of all 8 of those and eventually win the game. So yeah, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I am going to lead with my Persian as he leads with his Florges. And you might be thinking, okay, easy parting shot out, turn 1, just not risk it, or yeah, just know that I'm going to outspeed, go into my Mawile, get my rocks up, and I'm going to go into my Mawile regardless. But Persian is very, very important for his Mega Charizard and his Snorlax. So even though I know that this is going to be a bulky Florges, it's going to have Wish, it's just going to be a bulky overall set to support his team, I don't want to risk a potential Scarf Florges killing my best Desire Dancer turn 1. So instead of Parting Shot, I'm going to hard switch into my Mawile as his Florges goes for Wish. I mean, I pretty much knew it, but turns out there was nothing really done, as I do just go straight for rocks as he brings in his Charizard. I decide not to Mega Evolve, as I was thinking that, okay, I'm going to need the Intimidate later on the Snorlax, as Mawile is my main Snorlax switch, and it can also help me relieve a little bit of the pressure on Persian in order to have Persian better take on Charizard. Like having Mawile's Intimidate helps me better check Snorlax, which allows Persian to better check Charizard without being pressured as much. He goes into his Charizard before I get my rocks up. I mean, that's a good play. But nonetheless, my rocks are up, my Persian is at full health, he Swords Dances on the switch, and I know that, okay, if he's adamant and goes for Flare Blitz, he's going to knock me out. But the combination of Foul Play plus Flare Blitz Recoil will knock him out, and plus if he's a no bulk variant, then I can just knock him out straight away. But it turns out he actually has a decent little chunk of bulk, as Foul Play is not going to be a one-hit KO, but Dragon Claw does not take me out, and I am able to take out his Charizard with a knockoff from my Persian. So early on, able to get rid of one of the biggest threats to my team, but he goes into his Greninja at this point, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go straight into my Spadef P2. Actually, I don't even know if it's Spadef. I think it might be like physically defensive, but with a good chunk of Spadef to always take on Specs Gren. As my Porygon 2's in, I'm gonna go straight for the Toxic as he goes into his Rotom. Unfortunately, I miss, and now I'm like, okay, we see the lefties on Rotom. My Porygon 2, apart from Toxic, can't really touch it. So I'm gonna go straight into my Necrozma, see what he wants to go for. Maybe if he wanted to go for a Toxic, I'd rather have Necrozma Toxic than my P2. But with Necrozma in, I'm gonna fire off a knockoff to get rid of the Rotom's lefties. As he ends up going into his Florges, I get rid of Florges' lefties, and that is great for me, as now I'm going to go for another Toxic, just start wearing down those Aromatherapies or Heal Bells as he goes back into Rotom, and I end up missing a Toxic once again. So that really, really blows blows, as I've missed 2 Toxics already, but I will be able to knock off this Rotom as he does Will-O-Wisp me. I'm not sure what type of set this Rotom is, as we do see Lefty, so I'm assuming it's bulky, and it does have Defog and Wisp, so I'm like, okay, bulky Rotom, that is fine. I'm just going to get a Toxic off on this thing, as I know Necrozma, even if he's like offensive with Will-O-Hex, that's not something that he can really do a whole lot to my team with, and Necrozma can take 1 hit if I need to. But with the Rotom in, I know that I can take any Hex that he wants to go for if that's what he chooses to go for, so I just go for another knockoff, try to wear the Rotom down, as it is his Defogger. As he goes into his Florges, gets rid of 1 Aromatherapy. As I go for the Toxic, I do underspeed. That was intentional, so that Florges would outspeed me and be able to go for an Aromatherapy while I still get the Toxic off. But now, with the Florges in, I'm going to go straight into my Mawile to get my rocks back up, because you guys might just want to buckle in, because this is going to be 100% a war of attrition. I'm going to even speed this up a little bit, because I'm going to just be playing completely safe at this point. I am not making any sort of risks at all. My Mawile, I know I can take a hit. If he wants to go for Earth Power, that's fine. I do have the Z Parting Shot with my Persian later in the game. Mawile was one of the targets that I intended to Z Parting Shot into, so I was okay with taking that turn in order to get up my rocks and get a knockoff on the Lugia, and that's exactly what ended up happening. And now I'm going to go into my Dialga, as even though he's probably going to go for the Earth Power, I don't want to risk my Porygon 2 getting Toxic, as that's one of the main things that really just stops his team at this point. Like, if I can get rid of the Snorlax, then Porygon 2 can basically win the game with a combination of Tri-Attack, Trick Room, and Toxic, or at least put my Mega Mawile in a wonderful position to win the game on its own. So I'm going to go into my Dialga, even though he is going to go for the Earth Power, that's fine. It's not going to do a whole lot, as you'll see, but he ends up getting the Spadef drop, which is like, ah, crap, well, whatever. I'm just going to go into my Necrozma, start firing off Toxics once again. As rocks are up, if Rotom wants to come in, it's going to take rocks damage, it's going to take a Toxic as well, but instead I'm going to double into my Mawile, thinking that he would try to take the opportunity to go back into his Florges and go for the Aromatherapy, but he gets me by going into his Rotom, so I'm like, okay, crap, I don't want my Mawile, I don't want my Mega Mawile to get burnt, because that is very, very important against him. So I'm going to go into my Necrozma. As he goes for the Will-O-Wisp, my Necrozma is already burnt. That is completely fine with me, and I am just going to go for the Toxic as he defogs. I mean, I know that you might be thinking that this is just kind of a rinse and repeat scenario, as now with him going for the Hex, I'm going to go for the Morning Sun. Just wanted to scout out what this Rotom was, and now seeing how much Hex does, I'm like, oh, okay. This kind of sucks, because I don't want my Necrozma to go down just yet. Knockoff is super good against his team. I can't always heal up on the Florges, on the Lugia. I can still knock off the Snorlax, because even though I'm burnt, Necrozma's utility is not nearly gone. Like, Necrozma is still very, very good in this game. So I am going to pull the switch into my P2, as I'm like, okay, this Rotom doesn't have Toxic. If I'm burnt, that is completely fine with me. As he makes a good play, goes for Pain Split, gets a good chunk of HP back, but now I'm realizing this Rotom literally cannot touch me apart from Will-O-Wisp, and getting Porygon 2 Will-O-Wisp is much better than getting it Toxic. So I'm like, yeah, if he wants to Will me, that is just fine. As I end up, as he goes into a Snorlax, as I recover, I double into my Persian, and I'm like, okay, I think I can catch him on this turn. I was thinking that with the Florges in against the Persian, I've been making the safe play all game. He's just going to go for an Aromatherapy, try to get rid of the poison, so I'm just going to go ahead and taunt that thing, as he actually ends up pulling the switch back into his Snorlax as I taunt, which is like, oh, well, that's fine with me. This just means I get a free knockoff on something. As he goes into his Lugia, Lugia already does not have its item, so that's fine. I'm going to be able to Parting Shot that thing, go back into my Porygon 2, as I'm thinking, yeah, he'll just go for the Earth Power as opposed to the Toxic, as he gets another Spadef drop with Earth Power, and I'm like, huh. Well, how about that? But either way, I'm going to go into my Dialga predicting the Protect from the Lugia, and now with the Snorlax in, my Dialga, I have a good chunk of physical defense as well, in addition to Spadef, so I'm just going to go for the Toxic, start wearing down the Snorlax. As he ends up getting Toxic, he goes for the Curse. I was definitely predicting the Curse-Lax, and now, with Snorlax in at +1/+1 and Toxic, I know that a Facade will knock me out from 50%, so I could go for the knockoff right now, but instead, I'm going to go for the Morning Sun, thinking that, okay, I'm gonna snack off my Necrozma. Wow, I'm going to sack off my Necrozma at this point. Necrozma has done its job. Like, it has, I mean, it's really just annoyed the crap out of his team, and it's been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm gonna Morning Sun up, knowing that I can take one Facade from full. at +1, even with a toxic Snorlax, and then after that, with the toxic damage will not quite put him in range of knockoff, so basically I just get an extra round of toxic damage off on the Snorlax to make it more easy for my Mawile to pick it off in the end. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, as he actually ends up pulling the switch into his Florges, I guess predicting the knockoff, but that's exactly why I went for Morning Sun. Even if he did switch out, then I would still come out on top. As Florges is in, it's toxic, his team is toxic, so I am just going to go straight into my Mawile, get the Stealth Rocks right back up, as once again, the rinse and repeat. Like, there is zero reason to not try the rinse and repeat. I went for the Play Rough just in case he went into Rotom right there to try to catch me on the defog, but Lugia comes in, I get my rocks up for free, and now I'm able to go back into my Necrozma, who has a ton of health, fire off a toxic once again, and yeah, this game is super boring, but I know that there is nothing he can do to break my team at this point. With the toxic on Florges, he could either Wish or Aromatherapy, and now I am, with the Lingering Wish, I'm just gonna go straight for the Play Rough. My rocks are up. There is zero reason for me not to, and even if he did have the hidden defog on his Florges, I was still able to knock that thing out as he got rid of my rocks. Well, Florges is gone, Aromatherapy is gone, and this just puts me in a wonderful, wonderful position, because now any toxic that I get on his team is here to stay. So my Porygon 2 is looking to be in an amazing situation. So now he brings in his Snorlax. I'm like, okay, Snorlax will outspeed my Mawile. My Mawile is minimum possible speed to take advantage of Trick Room for my Porygon 2. I'm just going to knock off this thing's item, because unless he has Belly Drum, he's already revealed Curse, so unless he's like Curse, Belly Drum, Facade, Earthquake, then he doesn't have any method of recovering his berry, which I think would be suspect. So I'm thinking that this thing does not have Belly Drum, obviously, so I am just going to go straight for the knockoff, as he goes for the Curse, gets up to +1/+1, and loses his speed. But what's important, because even though he got up that +1/+1, he dropped his speed, so now my Mawile outspeeds, and I am able to knock him out with a Brick Break. He goes into his Greninja. My Porygon 2 is specifically designed to take this thing on, goes for Hydro Pump, misses. It would have done like 30, so that really doesn't matter whatsoever. I'm going to go into my Porygon 2, get up the Trick Room. Even if he decided to stay in Hydro Pump, I could then recover that off later, and now it is all on Porygon 2, just spamming Toxic. That's all I'm going to do. Porygon 2 technically cannot touch this Rotom, but Rotom has already burnt my Porygon 2, so him having a Toxic, me having a burn, puts me in a much, much better situation. So all I'm going to do at this point is just spam Toxic, because either he switches out, which he does right there, and I catch something else with the Toxic, or his Rotom stays in and racks up Toxic on it. So Greninja's in, goes for the Hydro Pump, does jack all. I'm going to set up the Trick Room once again, because this Toxic Trick Room recover Porygon 2 is going to end up winning me the game, as I go straight for the recover, because I knew I'd outspeed anything he wants to go into. I finally Toxic the Lugia as he goes for Earth Power. Ends up that I did copy the Levitate from the Rotom, and he's unable to even get Spadef drops with Earth Power, and at that point he does forfeit, because there's literally nothing he can do. I've Toxic'd his Lugia, his Greninja, and his Rotom. All I have to do is just get Mawile in under Trick Room one more time. Like, I can even bring Mawile in on the Lugia, just start firing off Play Roughs, and stuff will die eventually. Like, things on his team will die. If I get up rocks, then it just kills stuff. Like, even just firing off Play Roughs without rocks, due to the Toxic that I have on every single one of his mons. Like, it's a completely lost game for him. Even my Persian, I still have the Darkinium Z on my Persian, so I can take a big chunk of damage on my Mawile to get it in to force a single kill, so that I can, you know, force a kill and put myself in a better position, like get rid of a mon and force him to take more and more toxic damage. So basically, like, there was absolutely nothing he could do at that point. I still had all of my resources. My Zygarde, my Rest Hawk, DD Zygarde still was there to completely win the game at the end. Like, I don't think there was anything he could have done against that either, especially with the Lugia Toxic. So yeah, we are able to win the unfortunate game that we have to play in playoffs, because we accidentally made playoffs 6-0. So a very, very convincing game. Turns out I can just play that Toxic and knockoff spam pretty darn well, so okay, that sounded a little more conceited, but yeah, Toxic and knockoff spam is super easy to play. I mean, like, it's mindless, it's what it is. So I was intending that as a joke that, yeah, I can play mindless strategy well. Good job, Sticks, way to go. But anyway, we do move on. We are going up against mid, and the unwinnable matchup that is Mega Mewtwo X. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and this is Sticks, signing out. Why not? See you guys.